just so everyone knows, while we're all just sitting here, this is scheduled to start at 6:30, and by state law, it can't start before that. So we'll wait until 6:30. We can start after that, but we can't start before.
I think it's just time right now, so 6:30. Call to order our regular meeting tonight on Tuesday, September 27, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. And we are here at the City Council chambers. The anchor location here is 3600 South Constitution Boulevard, West Valley City, Utah 84119. Roll call, we have all council members are present, except Mayor. She is excusing herself tonight. And we'll turn over to Council Member Don Christensen for the opening ceremony.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We had a report in study meeting tonight of the intern projects, and the top one was Family Week. I went to the kickoff for Family Week and met Troop 231 from the Boy Scouts. As everybody has commented here on the dais, Boy Scout troops are few and far between these days. And so I immediately went over and talked to the leader and asked him if he could present a flag ceremony for the city council also. So tonight we have Troop 231, and we'll turn the time over to you.
Color guard attention. Color guard assemble. May the audience please arise. Color guard forward march. Please salute the flag in the proper manner. Color guard post the colors of the United States of America. Color guard post the flag of the state of Utah. Color guard, honor your colors. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America Two. Color guard uniform. Color guard forward march. Color guard dismissed. The audience may be seated.
Thank you very much. You're welcome to stick around or you're welcome to leave. If your scout meeting starts at 7, that's where you need to be.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you parents that brought them.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. We have approval of minutes, September 2022. We need a motion and second for that.
Move to approve those minutes. Second.
Have a motion, have a second. So all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Comment period. We have 30 minutes for this one, and speaker has 5 minutes for each. You speak once. And the format for this is no question or answer. So no Q&A, no debate, and you speak directly to the mayor, but she is not here tonight, so directly to the mayor pro tem, that's me. So we can start right now. You see the monitor right here in front of you. When you speak, you can look at the monitor and you can see how much time you have left, okay? Let Paul Nico, the first person in this list, Paul Nico, so please come forward.
I'd like to know when they're going to get the traffic slowed down on 4100. I'm up at 6:30 every morning. At 6:30, they're bumper to bumper, 70, 80 miles an hour. I've seen 3 officers in 2 weeks. So I'd like to get calmed down a little bit. In fact, it took me 20 minutes to get out of my driveway one morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next one is Jim Visar.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, Jim Visak. I wish they would have stuck around. I'd also like to recognize 231. They're at most of our My Hometown events, and they do the colors for our My Hometown events. So they are, I think, the only other Boy Scout group around, so. But they do a lot of our flag ceremonies, so. Last week I reported an issue with the apps, and our IT guys got it fixed in 1 week. A way to report where it doesn't go to my house, it goes actually to where the report should go to. The only other thing, and I've been told they're working on it, is in the code enforcement, they need an other, because they only give you 2 or 3 options, and there's a lot of ordinances. So if they just had a general other, and then the person could fill it in, that'd be very helpful. Last couple of weeks, we've had several block parties. One council member hits several of them. We didn't cross paths, but I heard that he was going around. And then last week, I believe we had the last one that's on the agendas. I know there's a couple more that are going to happen out there. Block parties are fun. You get to go out and you meet the community, and I highly suggest you guys come out to them and talk to your neighbors. Even if it's not your area, it's still nice to talk to them and let them know who you are. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Mike Markham, please.
Okay, Mike Markham, she knows my address. In light of hoping I don't get the bigot chant started again, but with the little notes that we give the people that don't maintain their yards, the courtesy notice, they don't work worth a damn. There's people that supposedly got the courtesy notices in my neighborhood that there's absolutely no changes. The weeds are still growing up over the wall. They're in the front of the, between the parking and, I should say, the sidewalk and their parking lot of unlicensed, unused cars so they can park on the street. There's nothing happening there. I'm sorry. Courtesy notices don't work. You take money out of their pocket, it's going to work. People buckle under the pressure of money. So we need to get off of this courtesy stuff. We love you. We pat you on the back. You know, we appreciate what you're not doing in your yard. But just try to do better, would you? No, if we stuck to the fine program, we could probably double our code enforcements. But I don't know that the fine thing works. Just like the parking issue. It's pretty cheap to park on a street for $25. You gotta live in New York. Another thing I wanted to bring up here, I spoke here to somebody not too long ago about, they're called stacked houses. I don't know if any of you heard about them. They're being made out of shipping containers. I was laughed at about building these stacked houses for vets. We put together all these great monuments for the deceased vets, but we don't seem to be able to step up for the vets that's really struggling in life. There's a whole company out there that's doing these stacked houses. I talked to a gal the other day that works for them, and they're putting on, I can't remember if she said it was Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County. They're putting together a big proposal on these stacked houses for veterans and people that can't work, won't work, whatever the problem is. Another thing I'd like to bring up is, which I thought it was a clever idea. I mentioned it to Lars. I went out in a neighborhood here west of Bangor Highway and just a little south of 6200. They had signs up for a speed bump. But guess what? Sometimes the speed bump's there and sometimes the speed bump's not there. The people never know when the speed bump's there, but the liability is covered because it's signed. Paint the white lines. One day they might tear the daylights out of their car. Another day they may slow down and go across it, but you never know. I've got a car that I've got to go across those speed bumps sideways on. So unless you go really fast on these speed bumps, you can fly over them unless it's the ones that's more vertical that'll tear the guts out of your car. But if we want people to slow down, maybe if they tear the guts out of their car enough times and they have to pay for it, they'll slow down. You know, we've got other things that, you know, we won't repair that'll tear the guts out of a car that I've pointed out to people over here on 39th and Redwood Road. We won't fix. We'll put up a sign, but if you hit it, it's going to tear the left front tire right off of your car. But, you know, a couple of those quick things, you know, put a little thought to it, you know. Gosh, guys, you know, I've only had one council person, maybe two, speak up to me about neighborhoods being taken care of. Thanks, Scott. So I guess every one of you, there is not a problem in your neighborhood, because none of you that I've ever heard has spoke up and said they have a problem in their neighborhood. Don did one time when I kind of chastised him because of his neighbor, and we've done everything we can because of his neighbor. But you know, it takes a village. It takes the city council to make some changes across the board. If we're not going to clean up our city, let's let those 5 or 6 code enforcement officers go. Let's abandon the system and let's just go forward as a city. I don't know how much we could save by not having that department. But we could probably save a fair amount of money. But if it's not working, it's not working. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Next person, Steve Rose.
Not gonna lie, it's pretty darn intimidating, just in case you want to know. There's a property for sale on 5990 West, 3500 South. It has a large, the house is on 3500 South itself, and there's a large property going behind it. And there's a potential that somebody else is going to sell in that area as well. Or they're worried about they think that they have to sell it because if somebody comes in and there's a concern about a developer coming in and turning that into high density housing in that spot. I know it's not zoned for that right now, but there's concerns of the neighbors, and so I'm kind of representing a couple of people. One couldn't come tonight, one that lives there. But he has a bunch of acres as well, and the concern is that area being purchased and then being rezoned for high density housing in some fashion. There's already apartments that are north of there near the Winco, the Highbury ones that have some there. And then there's also high density housing that's going in east down 3500 south, just east of 5600 west. So I'm just kind of here asking the council to consider measures that doesn't turn into high density housing. A few people that I've talked to, in that area would like to, if it's going to sell and it's going to be developed, that it's a low density, that it stays as a zone for low density housing, or however it would be as it currently is. We're just concerned that there's just going to be more apartments. Not that I'm anti-apartment necessarily, but we're hoping that we can invite people that are going to invest in the community. And there's plenty of apartments and plenty of people multiple families living in homes even around me. And I live right near there. And I'm not saying anything against that. That's not for here nor there. But I think there's plenty of options for multiple families to live in places where we're just hoping that a few of us in the community, and probably others, if I mention, hope that area can stay as a low, if it's zoned for low density or for homes or however it is, that it stays there, that some developer doesn't come in and put in like a smaller apartment complex or something like that. Just hoping that we can get people that will be invested in staying in West Valley and building up the community. And so again, I think the address, I'm sorry, it's really small and I didn't dare stare at it for fear of hitting the car in front of me. But it's right about 5990 west 30. It's right on 3500 south. It's up for sale right now. And there could be other properties that are going. We're just asking that it be considered to be not zoned for a higher density place. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone wants to speak for the public hearing tonight? I mean, for the public comments tonight, but didn't have a chance to put your name down. Go ahead, please.
Actually, I did put my name down and then crossed it out. And
Okay.
changed my mind again. Hi, Wayne. I came here to comment on the proposed zoning of the property at 3940 South, 5200 West. I attended the Planning Commission meeting a month ago wherein the developer proposed some changes. The Planning Commission turned those down and decided to present their plan to you as it had been before without any changes. I asked the developer on the way out when we might see some activity on that property. He said, as soon as we get the approval, we will start. Now, given the current downturn in the housing market, I'm not sure that's still the case. But I'm just here to voice support for that zoning on that property so that development can begin if the developer actually is ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Yeah, please come up. Because you didn't put your name here, so can you state your full name and your address so our city recorder can put that in a record? Thank
Sure.
you.
My name is Mary Lou Little. I live at 3844 West Rawhide Drive. And I'm glad I have a chance to speak after this gentleman. I am all for keeping our yards kept up. But I would like to just bring to your attention something that happened in the last couple of weeks. We had people in our neighborhood who received the courtesy notice about the landscaping. We're given 5 days to take care of that. Most of them were because their lawns were too brown. And we have 5 days to take care of that. I would like to ask you how that can be possible. It cannot be possible. We're just into the end of the hottest summer ever in the history of Utah. We're already going to hit the hottest September in Utah. Some of us have been trying to save water. I'm sure that some of us need to use a little bit more. But I would also like to bring to your attention that our neighborhood has had the roads torn up since April. They're there sometimes, they're not there. We have no idea when they're coming. We have no idea where they're going to work. We have had times right in front of my house where I can't hardly get my car out. You start down your road and you wonder how you're going to make it through. We had people working there today, this morning, on the south side of the road, and they can be there a couple of hours and then they leave. So we have people digging in the parkways. We have places that have been dug up right in front of people's houses and their driveways. And they're gravelly, they're dirty. When water gets on them from sprinklers or from rain, it's mud, absolute mud. And I think personally that there needs to be looking into the whole picture of the situation. If the ordinance enforcement went out in July, the first part of July, and said, your yard's not looking very good, that would be a time when you could take care of it. But the middle of September, we got the notice on the 15th and we're given 5 days. It hasn't happened yet because there are so many people who have filed. I don't know what they want to do. They're contesting this because there's nothing that can be done. So I would ask you to please consider checking up on this. I also don't want weeds growing over the fences. But you know what? When your streets are ripped apart, you just have to have a little bit of leeway on this. And you have to have enough time that you can green up your lawns. It can't happen in 2 weeks. Even in July, it would probably be hard in 2 weeks, but it doesn't work right now. And I would really seriously ask you to please consider this time frame. I spoke with Ms. Barnett from the ordinance, the code enforcement, and she told me it didn't used to be like that. She used to be able to give warnings. No warnings, 5 days, and that's it. So I really appreciate your time and hope that you'll consider that. I do have a little paper with specifics on it for each of you that I will make sure you get tonight. Thank you.
You can pass it to, ma'am, you can pass it to Nicole. Come out over there, so you can pass it to us. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, let me
Yeah.
do this first.
So please state your full name and show address as well.
My name is William Angus. The address I'm referring to is our family home on the corner of 3650 South and 3500 West, or 3600 West. We have a little problem down there. I'd like to ask the council members a question real fast. Have you ever gone west of, immediately west of West Valley Library? Just right here on 3650? You go west that way? The next property over for the last 6 or 7 years that I'm aware of has had weeds this tall. They've got the weeds down now, they're gone. But there's, I don't know, 30 to 50 Siberian elms growing in there that are up to this high. And they don't seem to get citations. But I do. Well, my family does. How's that? The property is located 3619 South, 3600 West. Inoperable or unlicensed vehicles is the first charge. The second one was surfacing. We hauled in gravel 3 or 4 years ago, and the code enforcement back then. And apparently we were complied with what they wanted. There were no changes. The cars weren't moved. And here we are again. I've got $100 fine. I applied for a meeting with the, what's his name? The administrative judge, and I haven't heard back from them. That was a little over a week ago. And also found this in the cleaning of real property, weed control and graffiti removal. Says here, weeds shall be maintained about at a height of not more than 6 inches at all times, and the cutting shall be promptly cleared and removed from the premises, except that real property not in close proximity to buildings or not creating a serious nuisance or fire hazard may be exempted by the department from the weed control requirements. What's a weed? Is a sunflower weed? As a milkweed a weed? The bees don't seem to think that so, and that's why some of our butterflies are disappearing. That's why we have some weeds, and I don't think that ordinance control knows what a lot of things are. They just see something growing there and they figure it's a weed because it's that tall. And they want it taken out. One more thing I'm going to say really fast is I've lived at that house, at that address since I was 5 years old. I lived through the window of 48, 49. I remember seeing snow as tall as the telephone poles that year. That's one thing. And the other thing is there used to be a railroad track that ran along 3650 South. It went to apparently probably a Latter-day Saint feed mill. And it was old when I was 5 years old. So it's gone, long gone. But I used to go catch frogs and snakes up there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, William. Anyone? Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Yeah, save your full name and your address, please.
My name is Karen.
Oh, yeah, right here, ma'am. Yeah.
My name is Karen Halterman, and my address is 1506. Is it West 3255 South, Unit 4C, but and that's West Valley City. I have the same complaint that you have the last two, and it's I own a property at 3705 West, 3800 South. And I got a notice, it's a lease property. I got a notice that the tenants had some unlicensed vehicles. They took care of that right away. And then I got a notice that the Parkway strip, that's the strip between the sidewalk and the street. I didn't know that, maybe you did, but that had weeds and I was getting fined $100. It's burned. I mean, it's in drought. And when I went to the code enforcement and said, we're in a drought, he said, well, when Brigham Young came here, it was a desert, on and on. Some, I don't want to say cock and bull story, but I have an exhibit. And this is from the code enforcement. And that's what they're complaining about, the parking strip between the sidewalk and the street. And I'm supposed to pay $100 by, I think, October 19th. the tenants took care of the unlicensed vehicles. But I looked around that neighborhood and I found 5 houses that were worse on one day. And on another day, I found 4 more that were worse. And I just wanted a little relief from this. And I was also wondering, in Salt Lake City, they have an assistance program for landscaping that doesn't require so much water. Is there anything like that in West Valley City?
No question and answer, ma'am.
Oh,
You can sit there and we later can.
I certainly will sit down.
Okay, all right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay, one more over there. Yeah, please.
My name's Samuel Hardy. I live at 3639 South Olean Circle, and I am also having similar predicaments with code enforcement. So basically, my problem is that I have a piece of what was a gravel driveway when the previous guy owned it. I bought it, and ever since I bought it, I started having code enforcement come after me because I was no longer complying with the 50% green ordinance. So anyways, it's really been a struggle. So I've gone through a lot of things. I had a water line break, so I had to rip up all that ground up front and get that water line fixed. I had green grass at the beginning of this year. However, once the drought hit, it died. I do have a smaller chunk of grass that I would like to just have a smaller front yard that's zero scaped, takes less water, especially with how much heat we go through. I like maintaining that. And I would like to have the option to make that gravel again, especially considering the fact that we live in a twin home cul-de-sac. So everybody's got really small front yards and we have really bad parking. And so any parking that we can get in our driveways is better, especially since we've had issues with code enforcement regarding parking on the street. Anyways, the biggest thing is that I have 6 violations because of the fact that that chunk of land is gravel. I can't dig it up. Like it's rock hard. It's impossible to dig up. As soon as it gets cooler, I can water it down and hopefully start going to town on it. But when my water line broke, I tried to fix it myself, and I probably spent 4 hours outside digging a 2-foot deep hole before I gave up. And I hired a company to come do it, and it took them 2 days and 4 guys to get 2 holes 6 feet deep. So I called the code enforcement officer. I tried to explain my situation and they basically told me, tough luck, that sucks. I just asked for an extension. Can we wait till it cools down for me to tear up my yard? And the really frustrating part too is that I talked to my neighbors that are also would be considered violating the 50% green ordinance. None of them have gotten any citations for however many years. I had one neighbor that had gotten a citation, but they were given a month to comply. I saw they show me the document themselves. As that other lady was saying, I have been given 5 days every single time, and I've been getting a new violation issued every 10 days since this issue has started happening. So I really think that we need to consider the fact that not all people's property will be able to really effectively have that 50% green in the front yard and have a better way of, being able to ask extenuating circumstances regarding violations of code enforcement. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else, please? Okay, none. And I will let's close public comments and turn over to our city manager. Any comment?
Thank you, sir. So I don't usually make a lot of comments on a Tuesday night, and particularly due to the rules of the public comment period, I also don't like to get into the back and forth like the mayor pro tem was asking people not to do according to the rules. So I'm going to make some comments here about code enforcement, but I'm not going to address them to any particular property, although I might generally try to akin them to some of the general comments made. And I feel like I probably ought to do this for a couple of reasons. One, it's kind of that bad time of year when you're coming to the end of the summer and you got a lot of properties like these anyway. So we tend to get an upsurge in complaints. Two, the process is actually fundamentally sound, has all kinds of steps in it for people to take advantage of from an appeal or a second look or an extension or whatever standpoint. So as a good friend of mine once said, there's no pancake that's so thin it doesn't have two sides. So I thought I would at least take a stab here at defending the efforts of the code enforcement officers out there, since they can't speak for themselves as they're here. So we'll remember we probably had, I don't know, 6 or so, half a dozen-ish people speak to code enforcement tonight, and you kind of heard the whole spectrum, right? The code enforcement officers are too fast, they're too slow, they don't look at the right things. This is what's a weed. My ground's too hard. It kind of gave you a good feel for the multiplicity of difficulties they deal with out there on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and year-to-year basis. And because of that, that is the reason why there's many steps in this process that are set up, whether it's a courtesy notice that some people don't think work, or the progressive steps that go beyond the courtesy notice, which then do result in the potential for fines, but not necessarily if you take care of the issue. Or sort of a parallel track that we also have for some of these cases called an administrative citation, which starts also with the warning, but then can progress. And although nobody directly said out there they were getting an admin cite or warning, I could tell by kind of how contextually they were talking about this, that they probably were in that situation. Any of these processes are designed to get compliance with the ordinances that they stand, which is of course the stated and standing will of the council in terms of what code enforcement is meant to achieve and what the standards are. But built into that, as I mentioned earlier, are a number of different levels for ability to address that. And again, it was suggested that maybe if we added more fines or got more fines, that would aid in the code enforcement effort. That hasn't been the philosophy of the city in the past, and we haven't wanted to do that because, again, compliance is the goal here, again, right? Not trying to generate revenue or make these programs pay for themselves that way. They don't, and that's not the point. In addition to the multiple layers of formal process we have, I personally take a very high interest in code enforcement throughout the city, different times of year, different types. Landscaping, which we heard more about here tonight than anything else, is also the particularly difficult one because of what do you do if from an abatement standpoint or an enforcement standpoint. It's hard to make people install a sprinkler system or build a new landscaping system. All we can do is really sort of either carrot or stick them. Also, as a side note, yes, there is a park strip assistance program for the one lady that was asking about that. We certainly can get that information to anybody who is interested in that. But point being that these are very difficult issues these code enforcement officers have to go out and deal with every day. And I do go out and personally check on them myself. For example, there were at least 3 neighborhoods or properties or areas that were mentioned specifically by name, and at least 3 of those, if there were more than that, I'm not remembering which they were, I personally saw them today, not because there was a complaint I became aware of, but because they're areas that I either frequent or try to get out and take a look at myself. So these complaints in the forms of courtesy notices and admin warnings, they are legitimate violations that do need to be taken care of. I check them out myself. I've got pictures of one of them here that somebody brought up today and looks pretty bad. Now, frankly, I saw another one here that didn't look too bad. Both of those really just sort of speak to the idea that these officers are doing the best they can with the job they have, and there are checks and balances on them to make sure that if they're wrong, or if somebody like a administrative law judge, as it was mentioned wants to give them extension or time or extenuated circumstances, that piece is in place. Was going to talk a little bit on that about numbers. Here in the last couple of months, we literally have issued hundreds of code enforcement warnings, violations, whether those were courtesy notices, whether those were admin sites. And again, that number or that expression is going to horrify different people different ways, or it's going to please them different ways. It's too much, it's too little, what's going on, all that sort of thing. But again, that's why the process is designed as it is, to be able to take care of those issues in as fair a way as we possibly can, but at the same time, get the problem taken care of. Let's see if I wanted to address anything else there. Drought. One of the things that we're doing there is trying to, as I've worked with Lane and the code enforcement department, sometimes, again, I'm just speaking generally. In fact, let me put this a different way. We hear the drought and the water objections really fall into two basic classes. One, the water's too expensive and I can't afford to do it. Or two, the governor or some official from a drought standpoint told us to quit using water. And that statement varies a little bit, but it'll be any water, too much water, whatever. And so one of the things that we are doing to hopefully help with those folks that are having a little bit of difficulty that way is put together some information that we're going to put on the website that talks about, okay, hey, if you want to have a lawn, by the way, you don't have to do that. You can do water-wise landscaping if that's your preference. But if you're making the choice that you're going to have a regular landscaping format like lawn, as opposed to bark, mulch, whatever, the water-wise sort of thing, here's how much it costs. And here's how much it takes from a quantity standpoint. And hopefully that way we'll be able to help people understand it's really not as hard as you think it might be to maintain some section of lawn as it might be affected by code enforcement rules. We're going to put that on the website and hopefully that'll be of help. Probably too late for this growing season, but in the future, assuming that we're going to continue to have dry and drought conditions, hopefully that will. I think I covered all the points on the code enforcement item I wanted to. Again, I already took a long time on the one item, but there were a few here I was going to address tonight since I'm kind of on a roll anyway. Second is the stacked house topic. Mr. Markham brought that one up, and that has been actually looked into before. We have never proposed anything like to the council. I'm not sure how they would react to that, but just from the technical look and standpoint, stacked housing really doesn't equate from a square footage basis construction wise to be much, if any, better than regular construction costs are. And so therefore it's not something we as a staff probably would bring to you from a proposal for adding to our housing stock or structure, unless the council wanted us to do that. But I did want to just put out there from the general standpoint that we have looked at that in the past. One gentleman asked about zoning generally, specifically for a piece of property out on the west side of town on 35th South. I could go into a 30-minute description of our TOD ordinances and why zoning is or density is in one place versus another. I won't. I'll just sort of suffice it to say that, yeah, certainly any kind of property that is open or available for sale or for development, the council looks at very carefully. And before they make any kind of zoning decisions, they are very careful to consider and address the quality of the neighborhood, the best interests of the neighborhood, and certainly we recognize the value of both low density housing as has traditionally been in the city, and in some particular places, a little bit higher density where it works for various reasons. So wanted to also assure that gentleman that, of course, you as a council would be looking at any kind of change that way very particularly. Also, a comment was made about the 5200 West development. I won't say anything more on that other than I think, and Nicole can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that item will appear to the council from a decision standpoint on the 11th of October. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Just want to make sure that that was out there. And then I also had, I'm just going to kind of take a point of privilege here. So it was a pleasure to have the scout group do the flag ceremony today. And as I was standing and saluting the flag, I noticed amongst the audience, we had a really wide range of response. You had some people with traditional hand on their heart, some that were saluting, some that did not, some that everybody stood, which I thought was very, I was grateful for that and respectful, grateful that that was respected. And everybody was pretty congenial or pretty much respectful of everybody else's reaction or consideration of that program. For me, as I was watching that and thinking about that, it reminded me of a incident I had happen in Afghanistan at one time. And I was in charge of this combat patrol where we were taking a small convoy from one city to another. And this wasn't any particular import or significance one way or the other, except for the fact that none of us that were in the convoy had ever been to this place, and I was in charge of navigating us to get there. This was like a 2 or 3 day mission. And I will never forget, once we got to our destination and I saw that flag rising out of the middle of this compound, how happy I was. And from a safety and security standpoint, what that meant to me at that moment, and at a general higher level, overarching level, that means to all of us here as citizens of this country, and the privilege and the absolute blessing we have to live in a place like we do here. We had a gentleman that stood before us about a month ago who came from another country, and in one 5-minute session, he talked about both the problems that he saw, and I don't know if you guys remember who I'm talking about, but he talked about the problems that he saw in his neighborhood, as well as the context of how happy he was that there was even some sort of mechanism where he could have a general faith that those problems would be taken care of. And I thought to myself as he was speaking, I wish we could have more people here that had that context and that experience and knew what that was like to not live in a place where he had that sort of ability. Anyway, that was the last comment I wanted to make. I think that pretty much goes down my list, and I'll turn it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pyer. Turn over to the City Council. Any comments?
I've got a few on code enforcement. Just so the public knows, we requested a study meeting, hopefully to be in the near future, to talk about code enforcement. So that will be in the works. But a couple of things, courtesy notice, as I've had the opportunity to read a couple of those recently. We need to change the name or be more courteous, because there's nothing courteous about our current notice. And then brown grass, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things on code enforcement items that can be fixed in 5 days, corrected in 5 days, but there are a lot that can't. And so when people get a notice and they have 3 to 5 days to respond, that's pretty difficult. Mary Lou talked about the roads being torn up, and that's by Granger Hunter. They're redoing water pipes in their neighborhood. So that's understandable. The other thing that one other person mentioned is inoperable vehicles. I've had 2 people come to me in the last month. They've been cited for inoperable vehicles, and they asked the code enforcement officer, "How do you know?" Well, they said, "I don't." And so the owner went and turned them on and drove them out of the driveway. Why are we citing people for inoperable vehicles if they're not? I mean, I think I can see what an inoperable vehicle is. That becomes pretty obvious, but if it looks like it works, I don't know if we should be citing him for that. So that's the end of my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I wanted to say it's thankful that the city will be adding some examples and some guidelines on yards, because there are actually some really great examples that are out there of yards that have little to no lawn grass at all, and it still have received clean and beautiful awards from our committee here in the city. So that'd be really helpful. It's only going to get hotter and drier. So having more guidance on how to be compliant and still be water wise, I think is a great step forward.
Thank you. Let me scan through the list here, and I just want to say one thing about the co-enforcement. I ran into the same boat with the people just brought it up here. One of my rental properties is sad. They gave me the courtesy notice. I have a picture right here. I received it on Saturday afternoon. So not long ago, a few days. Today, Tuesday. So yesterday is Monday, and then before that is Sunday. So I got it Saturday afternoon, and they asked me to finish Wednesday. That means tomorrow. And see, when I got that letter from co-enforcement, and that Saturday afternoon, couldn't do much because late. So I went to borrow my fan truck on Sunday, and I do that right away. I did that right away up to a church. But usually like Sunday is the day for resting in that LDS. They taught us, but I didn't rest. So I borrowed a truck, and I spent a good amount of time in the afternoon with one more guy with me. He's a very good friend in the church too, and we cleaned it up very nicely. But so dark, so I didn't have a chance to put somewhere. Came back Monday morning, did a little bit, and today I finished. So I think the co-enforcement need to give people a little bit more time to do the courtesy notice and try to work with the citizens. The goal, the core, the basics, the principle we have here, we try to work with citizens to comply with our rules and regulation here in our city. It's not like give them a punishment or something is harsh on them. My case, that's no time. If you have a family event and you're gonna run out of time, because to give you Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 4 days, and you lose one day and Sunday, you have only 3 days. And the 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, if you have family events, something, and you can lose. And I think co-enforcement maybe just work in that area, try to work with our citizens and try to work with them nicely and try to get things done. They would love to do something nice in their house and in their neighborhood. I don't know about Mike Markham talking about his neighbors, but I think I work my tail off. Yeah. It's work for somebody, but not work for some other people. But you cannot put one side fit on. You know what I'm saying? Sunday, I went out to work right away. Came home from church and took out my white shirt and tie and jump and borrow, call my friend, get the truck, and did it right away. So I think we got to do something about this, and that's just nice with people and try to help them out with the front yard, backyard, whatever we ask them to do. So that's all I have to say tonight. Let's move to item number 10, resolution. Resolution number 22-144. And I will turn over to city manager.
Thank you, sir. So this resolution would allow the purchase of 4.7 acres at 4435 South and 4400 West, approximately. It's kind of a big parcel, and would be used in the future for building of a park in that area. The amount of the purchase is for $1.538 million.
Thank you. And we need a motion in a second for this one, or the turn over to the city, for the council for the discussion and motion.
I think that we need a park in this area, and this will be a great benefit to our city. So I move for approval of this resolution 22-144.
Second.
You have a motion, have a second. No question, I will turn over to the our city recorder, Nico Kamat, for a roll call, please.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilman Whitstone.
Yes.
Councilman Harmon.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Hune.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. New business, I will turn over to our city manager, please.
Thank you, sir. The applicant is DR Horton for final plat approval at 4100 South and 8400 West, and is requesting consideration of dedication of a portion of 4100 South west of U-111 to West Valley City. Now, this is in or as part of a large development project, mixed use residential, commercial, and I think a couple of other uses there in Magna. So it doesn't directly affect us from a development standpoint, but in order to be able to do that, half of the road there in that section is West Valley's jurisdiction and responsibility. So they're asking for the ability to make this dedication of that acreage. Again, as I mentioned, was 1.7 acres.
Thank you. I'll turn over to the council for motion and discussion.
Move to approve application SD-2-2022.
Second.
Okay, have motion, have a second. I'll turn over to our city recorder, Nico Kamat, for a roll call, please.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Harmon.
Yes.
Councilman Whitstone.
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Hune.
Yes, thank
Motion
you.
passes unanimously.
Consent agenda, turn over to our city manager.
Thank you, sir. It's a one-item consent agenda of the typical variety. This one's a special warranty deed authorization and acceptance of a public sidewalk easement agreement at no cost at 2600 West, 3800 South.
Thank you. Let's turn over to council for a motion or discussion.
Move to approve the single item on the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. No questions, turn over to our city recorder, Nico Kamat, please.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilman Whitstone.
Yes.
Councilman Harmon.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Hune.
Yes,
Motion
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously.
we have any closed session tonight, city manager? No?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We need one last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, all those in this favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. So we adjourn. Thank you.